If you've been following the channel long enough, you know that we're making this video series on players in the National Hockey League or elsewhere, and asking the question on what's next with them. We usually take a look at guys who either have played in the NHL and who are stars on their teams, or we take a look at young guys coming up, or just prominent figures in general. This is the first time that we're actually taking a look at a WHL or a CHL player, because all the other videos we've done have been guys who fled their teams and went to Europe, or who are already stars in the NHL, or who are looking to become better in the next few years. Today we're talking about Jett Woo, a Vancouver Canucks top prospect who, let's just say a year and a half ago, had a lot more hype than I guess he does now. Now, a lot of that does have to do with his play on the ice and some other factors as well, but we'll get into Jett Woo, who exactly he is, the profile, etc. in this video, and ask the question what's next with him, because Jett Woo, back when he was drafted in the 2018 NHL Entry Draft, yeah, this is 2018, this is the Quinn Hughes draft. The Canucks drafted Hughes in the first round and Jett Woo in the second round. Woo was a guy that a lot of people saw as a very, very nice pickup. Because back when Jett Woo was drafted in 2018, he was a guy that some people had as a much earlier pick than where he was picked 37th overall by the Canucks. However, I only say some, because some people saw Jett Woo as a legitimate potential first-round talent, but others like ISS, like Hockey Prospect, like McKean's, like TSN and Bob McKenzie, saw him as a much later kind of pick. Nevertheless, though, the Canucks chose Jett Woo with their 37th overall pick, and immediately after the pick was made, I remember Canucks fans rejoicing and being really, really happy with it. Canucks fans liked the grit, they liked the physical style that Jett Woo played. He was one of, if not the most physical players in the entire draft. Being able to hit guys despite only being 6 feet tall, he had a very, very strong will to succeed. And we saw that for sure in his third year in the WHL and his first after being drafted, where in 2018-19, he posted up a really good set of numbers with the Moose Jaw Warriors, 66 points in 62 games played. He was playing, albeit on the very stacked #1 power play in the WHL Moose Jaw Warriors squad, with guys like Josh Brook, with Justin Almeida, with Tristan Langan, and with Brayden Tracey. But he was good. He was really good, and Canucks fans in 2018-19 were super excited seeing the upwards development of Jett Woo. However, after Josh Brook went to the AHL, and some of the other guys, they left, and Jett Woo got traded from the Moose Jaw Warriors to the Calgary Hitmen, Canucks fans were like, okay, this is finally the time for Jett Woo to show himself off as a prospect worthy of the hype by himself. He's not playing with 2 of the 3 top scorers in the entire league anymore. So, now it's Jett Woo's time. Well, Jett Woo in his first season away from the Moose Jaw Warriors was able to post up 46 points in 64 games, which that's not a bad number, don't get me wrong. For a guy who is, 19 years old, playing in the WHL, that's not bad. But compared to what Canucks fans were expecting and had hoped for, it wasn't as good as the hype suggested. As a result, Jett Woo was not invited to the World Juniors, he didn't play for Team Canada, and now he's in a spot where, after wrapping things up with a very mediocre Calgary Hitmen team, he was one of the only D-men on his actual team to actually produce on the power play for once, and to actually do some form of damage up front. Igor Zamula was a D-man who didn't play all the games in Calgary, but he had much better offensive relative statistics than Jett Woo did. In fact, Calgary's mediocrity and Jett Woo's somewhat rough year resulted in Jett Woo actually having a negative even-strength goals for relativity score, meaning that the Calgary Hitmen actually scored more goals than the opponent when Jett Woo was off the ice. Woo did have more penalty minutes though, which does suggest to me that yeah, his physical side, his aggressive side, that didn't subside at all. It's just the offensive production and the overall goal-scoring ability of the team wasn't up to the standard that many Canucks fans hoped for when Jett Woo was stepping into his first season in Calgary. So, what's next? Well, we talked about it in Rick Dhaliwal's notes video. We talked about Canucks notes that Dhaliwal posted onto Twitlonger, and in that little section, he talked about Jett Woo, and he asked the question, hey, will defenseman prospect Jett Woo be able to make the switch to pro hockey and grab a spot with the Utica Comets, or will he be back in Calgary of the WHL for an overage season? And if you watch that video, you'd know my response to that idea. To me, I'm honestly indifferent. I could see him going either to the AHL or the WHL, and I don't think there would be a wrong answer here. But what I will say is that if I see Jett Woo going to the AHL, I'd honestly expect him to have a little bit of a tough time transitioning. Maybe not physically. I think he could probably keep up physically and keep up with the board play, the aggressive battles, and start throwing his body a little bit more. But let's take a look at a guy that Jett Woo did indeed play for, Josh Brook, back for the Moose Jaw Warriors a year ago. With the Warriors, Brook had 75 points. He was really gosh darn good. He had more points than Jett Woo did in fewer games, and he just made the Laval Rocket this past season, and he had 13 points in 60 games. He did have a very tough time transitioning. Now obviously what happened to Josh Brook is not going to happen to everybody, but I'm just using it as an example to say, yeah, just because the guy was really good one year in the WHL doesn't necessarily guarantee smooth sailing by any means in the AHL. A guy like Brogan Rafferty was able to do so well because of his experience playing against other men in the NCAA. He was 24 years old when he made his debut in Utica, and he tore things up. Jett Woo is 19. So I don't know if I'd be expecting a similar transition in the AHL with him like I did with Rafferty, let's just say. You know how long it took Guillaume Brisebois to actually become proper and develop at a good pace in the AHL? It took a while. Brisebois had a tough few years starting out in the AHL, and only now is he in a position where a lot of people can say, yeah, he could probably play some games in the NHL once in a while. Obviously, all the playstyles are different, etc. I know that Jett Woo is much more physical than these players, but it's because there's no real need to rush him that I'd honestly be okay with them keeping him in the WHL, giving him one more year with the Calgary Hitmen and saying, okay, you've had some rough goes, but let's see you try to match what you did last year in 2019 without the Josh Brook, without the Almeida, without the Langan and the Tracey. Let's see what you can do when you are the guy in Calgary. Igor Zamula may be there, he may not be there, we don't know. But for Jett Woo in 2020-2021, let's see you give your all in junior hockey for one more year and totally dominate things before stepping up into the AHL and looking to dominate there. Jett Woo is a guy who, to me, he still has a top 4 ceiling in this league. His physicality and his mobility are really good assets to his game, and one that will honestly somewhat thrive in the spotlight in a Vancouver-like scenario. But since the guy is only 19, there's no need to rush him. With the right side in Vancouver already taken up by Tyler Myers on a 6-year deal, Chris Tanev, who is a UFA, Troy Stecher, who is an RFA, and I guess Brogan Rafferty too, there really isn't any need to add to that right side immediately, unless of course you lose both Tanev and Stecher, which is unlikely, but at least one of them is gonna stay, I guess, right? Hopefully. But even taking a look at a guy like Olli Juolevi, that guy's 22 years old, he hasn't played an NHL game yet, and still Canucks fans do believe that, hey, Juolevi will become a good NHL player someday. So obviously, the end is not near for Jett Woo. We still have a lot more years of development to go through, but one rough year is not going to be enough for me to say, yeah, no, it wasn't a good pick or whatever. It just takes time. And whether the next year is spent in the AHL, learning the ropes and becoming accustomed to the pro game, or dominating one more time in the WHL, I honestly just hope that Judd Brackett and Benning and co. do the right thing, and whichever decision helps out the most is the one that is ultimately chosen. Of course, we won't know which one that will be, because if one decision is made, we don't know what the other one would have entailed, but that's just wishful thinking. I want our prospects to do good, and Jett Woo is certainly one who can do well down the line. It's just a matter of time to wait. So, comment down below what you think about Jett Woo. I hope you enjoyed this video. Social Troll99, and bye.